I tell founders all the time that only 1 in 200 software products actually make it. You haven't just made it, you've built a platform that now caters for over 100,000 properties.
One of the biggest things we used to say, we hire people smarter than us. That's what you need. You need people in the discipline of marketing, sales, and so on and so forth in order to succeed.
Takes a village to raise a child, takes a village to raise a startup, I guess.
Make sure your contracts are solid with whoever you're dealing with. And you're dotting your I's and you're crossing your T's as much as you can in that contractual environment. That's where certain things could get hairy carry.
Welcome to the iwon podcast, where we help fellow founders to share the real stories, no BS, the grit, the hard times, everything in between, so that listeners in our community can get the truth, the unvarnished truth, what it's really like to build something. And I'm really excited because today my guest is the fabulous, wonderful, delightful, and very intelligent, very successful Elizabeth Dodson. And did I use enough adjectives there?
You did. I loved it. Thank you so
That's a
much,
very long
Michael.
sentence.
Yes.
So she's been in the trenches for 14 years, building a SaaS business in the high stakes world of construction and property. And first of all, Elizabeth, welcome. Formally welcome.
Thank you.
I tell founders all the time that only 1 in 200 software products actually make it.
Mhm.
You haven't just made it, you've built a platform that now caters for over
Yeah.
100,000 properties.
Yeah.
That isn't a startup, that's like a legacy. That's
Yeah.
a big deal. And I'm going to lead to a question here, but of
No,
course I'm
perfect.
building up to it. Most startups don't even last 14 months. And
Mhm.
before we get into like the how and describe those early days, how did you spot the gap? How did you come up with this idea? If we started at that as the beginning.
Yeah, that's a great question. And most companies are started because either people identify a gap or they're frustrated personally with something that they've experienced in their life, and then they go build something. And so, to give a quick background on how HomeZada came to be, our team helped start, because one of my co-founders was a co-founder of another company called Meridian Systems, and Meridian Systems was the world's leader in commercial construction project management software. Whew, mouthful. But think of managing all the buildings around the world, all these vertical buildings that need a team of people to build it, all these subcontractors and contractors, but they also need software to keep everybody on the same page. And the margins for this industry, commercial construction, is very thin. It's very, very tight. So they need the right tools to help them manage it. So our team, the three co-founders of HomeZada, also happen to be members of the team in Meridian Systems. And it was as we're building and growing this company, because at first we were not the market leader. At first, it took years to get there, but then we retained that title and we owned it because I'm very proud, as well as many other people, that grew this company to hundreds of employees, partners all over the place, customers all over the world. Amazing. But I happened to be on all these different major projects. And just to give an idea, I was walking around the Dallas Cowboys Stadium project, major stadium for American football in the United States, in Texas.
I'm a
And
Bears fan.
okay, Bears fan. I'm a Ravens fan, but we also used it to build the Ravens stadium as well. But it happened to be on that project that I said, you've got to be kidding me. I have this platform, this software, these applications that can be used to construct and build all these major, beautiful buildings in the world. I mean, just amazing buildings, from casinos to roadways to schools to stadiums to amusement parks. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I'm like, but why is it that I don't have something to manage my house? I'm really struggling with managing my house. I grew up on the East Coast, moved to California, and the materials are different. The time of year and seasons are different. We don't have a basement in California, but we do in Maryland. And it's all these different scenarios that are happening. And at the same time, I was busy working, building a company along with all the other people at our company. And it really required a lot of my time. I was traveling a lot, traveling 2 to 3 weeks a month. It was just a lot of time. And so how do you manage your house when you are such a busy professional? And one of the things that I noticed was maintenance. I was tired of arguing with my husband over air filters. It's just silly. I don't want to argue
Yeah,
over
for the
air
air
filters.
conditioning system and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. That's just silly. Who's going to do it? When is it going to get done? It has to be done frequently throughout the year. And then why? And I'm not going to do everything, all things for our house. My husband has to be a player in the managing of our house as much as I do because we both worked. And at the same time, how do I know when things need to happen? And I remember there was one major incident that happened. We had built a brand new home, and within the first year, the hot water heater broke. And it was a hot water heater because at the time we built it, it was tankless ones weren't available. And it turns out where we moved, it's at the base of the foothills in the Sierra Nevadas. And so there's a lot of sediment that builds up. Well, there was all this sediment that built up into the hot water heater. And I was unaware that simply flushing a hot water heater on a regular basis would retain the life of that hot water heater.
Because
And
it would purge all the bad stuff
correct.
and
Correct.
yeah.
And the gentleman that came in, he says, it's so bad because you didn't do it at all. We need to replace the whole thing. And I'm like, well, that's expensive. And so this expense came and we had the disposable income to do it. And I was like, fine, we need to do it. But I asked the gentleman, the contractor that was replacing it, and I said, so what happens if people don't have the income to do this? What happens? And I was really frustrated because I'm like, you mean to tell me if we don't educate people, then they either have to go into debt, put it on a credit card, they have to take out from their savings. So for some people, that's a vacation or some other thing that they have that they want to buy for their home. So they can't have this other item because they've got to do this with this hot water heater or some other component. And the other part was, or they could keep showering with cold showers and wash all their dishes with cold water. And I'm like, okay, well, that just spreads germs. And everything, it was just like a menagerie of all these problems. And I'm like, all because we're not educating people. That
Because
doesn't
they
make any
don't know.
sense to me.
They have no way of knowing. Yeah. Why would
Correct.
they know?
And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is crazy. I go, how do we do something? And so lo and behold, I replaced the hot water heater and I was still frustrated. And at this point, I'm going, okay, I need to find a platform to help me manage my home. And I looked for 10 years, 10 years. And I'm like, I cannot be the only one that's having these same struggles. And I kept looking and kept looking and I kept looking and looking and looking and looking. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And a lot of people were
Why doesn't
saying,
this exist? Yeah.
exactly. And a lot of people were, you've already got a project management solution. Can't you just dumb down that and do it? And like, it's not the same. Commercial construction is very complex. There's a lot of cost management functionality that is required that you don't require on a home. You still need cost management, but it's less complex. And at the same time, when you're building a construction platform to build a building, you then tie into a facilities maintenance platform. That's a separate company, separate software package to get that done. Homeownership is an ongoing process. You need all the different items today, but that you need it year after year after year after year. And so it's completely different and with some similarities, but it's like, how do we do this? And so needless to say, I'm using Excel spreadsheet. I'm using physical photographs to take a home inventory of things. I am,
And this was 10 years ago.
well, yeah, before that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
10 years prior to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
14 years being in the business. So it's a long time
Yeah.
ago. And I guess it just says, I'm kind of a visionary, I guess. I don't know. And
Or very good at Excel.
I
Yeah.
had to be,
But
that's for
both.
sure. And so, and when you've been in technology as long as I have, you also realize that at that time, 20 years ago, the cloud didn't exist. SaaS, all that, it didn't exist. And we were early developers within the cloud environment with our previous company, but it just didn't exist. So all these documents are on your hard drives. And if
And
you're
if
not
your
backing
computer
things
goes
up,
missing,
oh,
yeah.
totally. We've had computers stolen. I've spilled coffee on computers. I mean, everything you can possibly imagine. So as an example, I had to recreate my home inventory, the contents of my home, and my maintenance calendar in an Excel spreadsheet, like over and over and over again, like 4 different times. I'm like, this is insane. This is crazy. And so, but I really care for my home. I really appreciate my home, and I want my home to operate properly. And therefore, I had to use all these Excel spreadsheets. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what it is. And then, as fate would have it, our company, Meridian Systems, was sold in 2006, long time ago. And that's a whole different journey. That was a great lesson learning journey. But we worked for the publicly traded company, the 3 co-founders in HomeZada. And 4 years go by and we say, hey, you ready to start that company you want? And I'm like, what? We have to do this whole startup thing all over again? We've already done this. But lo and behold, I knew I wanted this product, and I knew that question about the hot water heater, I didn't want anyone to ever have to go through that. I
Or have
wanted
to
to be able
pay
to
out of
empower people.
pocket for, yeah, there's like, it's so true with so many things. Like whether you're in the UK or the US, inevitably, you don't know. You're not a plumber, an electrician, a roofer,
Contractor.
whatever.
Mhm,
So you don't have any clue as to
mhm,
whether you're covered, there's a problem, when
totally.
things need to be maintained, and even like who to contact, what to do,
Correct.
and totally see it. I mean, if I
Mhm.
may just touch on one thing
Sure.
before we
Absolutely.
dive into that HomeZada bit. When you sold Meridian and you were a part of that process, and having gone through that startup and been a part of something that was really big,
Amazing.
uh, yeah, what did you learn from it? What were the bits you took away?
Oh my gosh. Do we have like a week in this podcast? No, I'm not joking.
That we
So
could do a world record if we did a nonstop podcast with no potty breaks. That would be a
that
Google,
would be
not
hilarious.
Google, Guinness
So
World Record.
Meridian was started. It's just, I am showing my age a little bit. I always try to avoid it, but Meridian was started in the early 90s. And so that had a whole nother component to building a company. There was no digital marketing at the time, whole different ball of wax. There was the very beginning of Windows applications. That's how far back we're going. And there was no internet. So
I
keep
remember
all of
those
that.
times as well.
Yes. So keep all that in mind, because there was different elements we had to learn along the way. The other thing that we learned is, when you don't know what you don't know, it's the easiest thing I can say. See if you have friends that are doing something similar in a different industry and apply it to what you're doing. And I'll give you a perfect example because it just resonated with me. We had a users conference. So for all of our customers and our partners, we would have a big conference explaining how people are using our platform, et cetera. And we wanted sponsors. I'm like, we've never done a sponsorship program, but couldn't we make money, or at least break
And to help
even?
pay for part of the
Exactly.
event or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Break even, because the events are expensive. I mean, they're super expensive. And so people pay to attend, but couldn't we lower the rate for our customers to attend if we had sponsors? And so I called a friend of mine back in DC, and she was an event planner. I'm like, can't make this up, for these big organizations and these associations. And I said, hey, how would I go about doing this? She goes, oh, I'll just give you the framework. Here you go. And she gave me the framework, and I built our sponsorship program for this conference within Meridian. So my point is this: you are going to learn things that you never thought you'd learn. You just need to figure out how to build it, apply it, and manage it moving forward. And then one of the other biggest things I will tell you, make sure your contracts are solid with whoever you're dealing with, and make sure you're dotting your I's and you're crossing your T's as much as you can in that contractual environment, because that's where certain things could get hairy-carry.
Don't do the whole, when your new Apple agreement pops up and it's 40 pages long and you just tap agree. Don't do that with your business.
No.
Good lesson.
Do not do that with your business. That is
I
one of
don't
the
know what I've
biggest
agreed
things.
to.
Yes,
I may have
you do
agreed to
not.
surrender all my earnings for the rest of my
Yes.
life. I do not know.
No. And I
Um,
will say this as another learning experience, there's a lot, as a small company building up, you will invariably work with very large companies who already have all of this dialed in. And I'm going to say this, just because they have all this dialed in doesn't make them right. I don't like that word, but right. It makes them dialed into the policies and procedures for their business. You can negotiate on anything and don't feel intimidated by them because they have all this dialed in. You just have to align yourself with the right people that can help you, whether you hire lawyers, whether you've got a friend who's a contracts lawyer that can review something for you pro bono, whether you have friends that know the event planning business, whether you have friends who can introduce you to certain marketing people. All those areas are where you leverage your network and you let fear go away and you go, okay, let's figure out how, one, we can make this deal work and at the same time protect our business and do what's fair for their business. And then we have a win-win relationship and everybody gets happy. And so I give that tip because that's absolutely critical. Because if you are not dotting your I's and crossing your T's during your contracting process, some challenges could present
it's
themselves
going to
and
bite you in the.
totally. And you don't want that.
So nobody wants that. The 2 points that I really
Mhm.
love that you said there, right, is first of all, essentially sit down, look at your network,
Yeah,
ask people,
totally.
even if you don't know people, just be honest about where you're at and just be like, could I grab 20 minutes of your time? I'll owe you a favor. Like you can call it in whenever. But the point is, it's amazing what you can do. If you imagine that you had $0, even if you do have
Yes.
$0,
Yeah.
because then you think, okay, well, how can I? Because weirdly, you can turn. That's the beauty of business, like in
Yes.
relationships. And
Hmm.
it's very interesting that you say that. And of course, about the fact that you can negotiate with anyone. Like you
Yes.
don't have to take, their terms or whatever. Find a win-win.
And by the way, to your point that we're going to talk about this win-win, those I's, like dotting those I's and crossing those T's is critical because we at Meridian, not at HomeZada, because we learned our lesson. At Meridian, there were times when we didn't dot our I's and cross our T's, and there were
And it was a
invariably
rush, wasn't
lawsuits.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there were invariably so when you're busy, because invariably it happens, and your business gets busy and it goes like that, and it goes in cyclical. And when you're on the trajectory and everyone in the company is busy, you don't have enough people, you can't hire people fast enough, all these different things. That's when you need to slow down for a minute, and especially with contracts, and just read it. Slow down. Make sure you're dotting your process and you have your systems in place because you're building systems on the fly. But you have some systems in place, especially with contracts, because it has gotten us into challenges at Meridian where it resulted in lawsuits. And I'm not here to scare people. I'm here to help them learn from our mistakes. Don't do what we did.
Dot your I's and cross your T's,
Correct.
ladies and gents. And also pull in favors, get to know people,
Yes.
build your network, use your
Yes.
network. I love those two things in particular because I
Mhm.
also know you're from a partnerships background. So
Yes.
you're
Totally.
very masterful at this.
Mhm.
But what a lot of people don't think about, and I'm sure you've talked to a lot of founders as well, is they think that they almost feel like they exist in a bubble and their idea is amazing and like they don't want anybody to ever know it and yada yada. And like the danger with that
Totally.
is, of course, you don't get any advice, you don't get any feedback, you don't get
Correct.
any improvement. And asking your family and friends for feedback on something
Mhm.
that they may never be interested in is not a valid test market, as they say. So
No.
ultimately, I love what you were saying about how, so Meridian, you learned to dot the I's, cross the T's.
Yes.
What else was a big sort of takeaway for you?
Big takeaway to your point. Don't think you know it all. Don't think one, you know it all, or you have to know it all. a lot of people get in that world where they start going, well, I feel like if I'm running a company, I have to run
I should know everything. Yeah.
exactly. And that's one of the biggest things we used to say is we hire people smarter than us, because that's what you need. You need people in the discipline of finance who understands this. You need people in the discipline of marketing, in the discipline of sales, and so on and so forth in order to succeed. And I'll give you a perfect example. I remember, because I was in the construction technology industry a long time ago, and one of my co-founders is going to just like, of course you had to share this. And I met him at a conference that we were all at in the industry coincidentally in DC. And he said, I started laughing. He said, my product is so great, it sells itself. And I literally looked him in the eye and I said, will you call me when you need sales and marketing? And he did, along with other people, because he realized that at that moment, he built this really great product for Meridian's product, the Prologue product. But he realized, oh my gosh, he didn't know anything about sales and marketing. He thought he did, but he didn't. And I got to tell you, because of that simple statement that I said back then, he is an absolute fan of sales and marketing today.
Because he decided it was
It
comfortable
was
being uncomfortable
correct. And it was
and
important.
accepted that he didn't know everything. Yeah.
Correct. And it was really important to the business. And I was like, okay, but a statement like that, when you say, oh, it's so great, it does this, understand that companies have departments for a reason. Because everybody, the whole village has to come together and has to understand how to support customers and partners in the long term and what that means. And therefore, we all have to help each other inside an organization succeed.
And it's very similar to that old adage, it takes a village to raise a child.
Totally.
Takes a village to raise a startup, I guess.
Yes. And think of the startup as a brain baby.
Yeah.
It's a brain
Yeah.
baby that you produced out of your brain, and everyone gets to be a part of adding on to that idea.
And did you, sorry to interrupt you there,
Yeah.
but what I was going to say was, you talked about dotting the I's and crossing the T's
Yeah.
and being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else that I guess that became your DNA in
yeah.
HomeZada? Like, guys, we don't know everything.
Yeah.
And we'll never know everything. And we're comfortable with not knowing everything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a weird thing when we're all kids.
Yeah.
We just throw ourselves into things.
Correct.
When we become adults, we think that we need to put on a mask to be somebody who's confident, somebody who's decisive, whatever. And of course, you have to make decisions. But like, embrace the idea that not knowing it can be fun too. Like,
Yes.
you could
It's
come up with
stressful.
something even better. Yeah.
It's stressful. Don't get me wrong. When you don't know something again and then you've got to learn it, you're like, seriously? I'm like, okay. And you're kind of exhausted sometimes. You're like, okay, I got to learn another thing and another thing and another thing. And I'll give you the perfect example. I don't think I'll ever fully be equipped and fully understand all the algorithms that all the social media platforms change on a regular basis. And I think
I don't
that's
think they know.
intentional. Exactly. I think that's intentional. And so I just go, you know what? I'm going to do the best I can with what I've got and with the resources that I got so that I can make sure our platform is sending the right message to the right people who need it. And I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to embrace the effort of learning, because the more you hone your skills, the better you will be. And then something else will enter in. And a good example with HomeZada is not only did we move from B2B, we moved to B2C, and like, you can't make this up, B2C consumers. And then we moved to B2B2C, because we do work with partners who support end customers who are in industries like insurance, mortgage, real estate, property management, et cetera, that we don't have skills in or networks in, because we came from commercial construction. And we're like, okay, we're going to have to make sure that we educate ourselves as best we can on those industries, communicate to them in their language. That's the other thing. Don't think because your language works, you need to communicate with them in their language. And it is a learning curve. And if you're fortunate, there's going to be some champion or some individual that will provide some of that data for you. Now, they're going to provide it from their perspective, but at least you're starting to learn more about the industry. And we've been doing this for a long time. And honestly, every day I meet somebody new, I learn something new about these industries because they're
Every
so
day is a school
complex.
day. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
I'm touching on a point you made, which I loved. And like founders listening, you focused on a phrase, you touched on a thing that I wholeheartedly believe, but it took me years to work out. Like you were talking about the algorithms, right? And
Mhm.
we can only control. So I said output, not outcome, because you can't
Correct.
control the outcome, but
Yeah.
you can control what effort you put in.
Mhm.
And that is a controllable, and that is something to be celebrated because especially running a startup of any kind, you're not going to get an output consistently. You're not going to get an outcome consistent. My apologies. But you can do consistent output, put in the effort, and the more doors you knock on, the more yeses you'll get.
Yeah.
Just by rule of numbers.
I'm also a firm believer the outcome may not present itself yet. So we've had plenty of partners who've wanted to work with HomeZada and they weren't ready for whatever reason. And then years later, they come back and saying, we want to reinvestigate this. Okay, well, let's do that. And they may be in a place with the right team, with the right initiatives to start figuring out how we can work together. And ultimately, all we're trying to do is help the homeowner manage their home. And I believe that a lot of these other industries that I just said earlier, real estate, mortgage, insurance, and various others, are also trying to do the same thing. They just may be choosing to do it from a different perspective. And how can we align together to do that? And it is where learning what they think, learning their industry, learning their specific company and what's going on there, and then also bringing what we think could help them. But to your point, listening, because something that you thought might work for them, they may tell you something different. Oh, no. I see how HomeZada can work for us here in this element rather than over here in what you stated. And you're like, if you're closed-minded, you're going to keep pushing an agenda that maybe they don't want. And that's why listening is really important. And it's also important with your customers themselves. So whether you sell to B2B or whether you sell to B2C, your customers may share with you a new way of using your platform, your software, what have you, that you hadn't thought of. I mean, I get it every day with our customers. Every day I hear something new going, I'm using it for this. And a good example is a woman, she was getting divorced after being married for 30 years. She loved her husband. She just was ready to separate, do their own thing. And she wanted to do what was fair. And she used HomeZada's Home Inventory and Homeowner AI to come up with estimates and the items. And they split everything fairly. And that led to a better relationship moving forward because they have kids. And a better relationship with them when their families are together. So, like, when I hear stories like that, I get really excited because I'm like, I did the right thing putting HomeZada out into the world, even though it's been hard.
And touching on that point about it
Mhm.
being hard, right? Like the idea of digital home management, right? As a marketing guy, I naturally think, you've got a difference between an educated market and a totally uneducated
Totally.
market. And what you were launching into was a market that was fully uneducated. They could
Totally.
probably understand the value, but until they even recognize that's a thing, what was that like for you. Like, you know, totally
So
like,
so
go
it
ahead.
was hard. So it's super, super hard. So basically, digital home management is a brand new category of software. But the good thing is we have fortitude because we had to do the same thing at Meridian, believe it or not. In the commercial construction world, project management software was considered what we refer to as scheduling software. So scheduling is different than project management, and people can look that up on their own. But we had to build that category, and it's ironic how a lot of people in the industry started building and using the category that we made up. It was kind of funny. And I'm like, oh, look, this is a competitor's doing this competitor's doing this. And I'm like, well, we must be doing something right. And when we put out HomeZada, we're like, well, what do we call it? And we're like, okay, a digital home management platform. Digital home management platform resonates really well with corporations. They
I
get it.
was going to say that straight away.
Totally.
They're like,
They're like, we
we
get
need a
it.
digital home management platform.
Hmm. Get
Of
it.
course. Yeah.
With consumers, you're like, what? What is that? And they've never heard it. And our unfortunate part is we don't have a whole lot of competitors out there either. And for whatever reason, people like to compare things, which I'm not a comparer. That's just not me. I want a tool that I can use to manage my life and to create efficiencies. And this will do it. But the reality is a lot of consumers like comparison. And so that becomes challenging. So one of the things we had to do is play around with phrases. And the fortunate part, this is very fortunate, we can do A/B testing on your websites. And for people who don't know what A/B testing it is, it's literally testing different theories. And
Yeah.
it's like one, two phrase,
Text,
yes,
colors, anything.
anything. And so we tested digital home management platform and an all-in-one suite to manage your home. And consumers love an all-in-one suite to manage your home, which makes sense. And one of the other things that we also had to do is everyone looks at us, oh, you support customers. You need to tell a story and you need to have all these beautiful, crazy graphics. We did that because we listened to somebody that they thought they understood marketing. Well, it never resonated with people. So once again, we did more A/B testing, constant A/B testing, and we put a diagram or a photo with a screenshot of HomeZada and the phrase all-in-one suite to manage your home. People still need to see a screenshot because there isn't anything really out there like us. They need to know that we are actually a software platform versus somebody who goes and finds contractors to send to your home, because that's what we're not. And so we had to start playing around with that and listen to people, but at the same time, ignore those people. So you have to really use your thoughts and your own discernment to say, I appreciate what they're saying. And we do have to incorporate stories, but at the same time, we do have to do more testing to resonate with our audience until we can get bigger and start adding in more marketing stories, if that makes sense.
And yeah, a ton of what I do with software companies is the storytelling side.
Mhm.
And done well, it's amazing.
Yep.
Done badly, like everything. And the interesting part about what you were saying, and I
Mhm.
think that every founder needs to hear, you're 14 years in with this,
Yeah,
and you're still obsessive about A/B testing. I love that
totally.
because there are so many things. We're human beings. We have our own experiences, our own
Yes.
backgrounds. As much as we'd love to be fully objective, especially when it's our thing,
Mhm.
it's very difficult to be.
Yes.
Whereas there is nothing like just
Correct.
putting it out there and going, you can have a little side bet if you want, internally. But the point is, you never really know what's going to hit. You can have an
Correct.
inkling until you start testing it. And that is so fundamental because I know a lot of people don't do it as much as I hammer on that all the time. One of the stories I heard, and I don't know whether this number has changed, Amazon tests like 4,000 different things a day.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
We don't notice it
Mhm.
because obviously
Yeah.
it's just Amazon.
Yeah.
But they're testing on us all the time, and they seem pretty successful. So test away. In terms of so you talked about the idea of like people loving it and the stories
Mhm.
of people loving it, right? As you built this
Uh-huh.
with your co-founders, inevitably, I'm sure you had doubters, you had haters, call them what you want to call them,
Naysayers.
and naysayers, anybody who wants to trash a good
Mhm.
idea or somebody doing well. What would be your like advice to people who like fear is such a thing, right?
Mhm.
That dominates people's minds. Like, what if they think I'm stupid? What if they think these are all
Mhm.
perfectly reasonable things, by the way? I'm not
Yep, totally.
knocking anybody for feeling it, but I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on how you've dealt with it.
So you bring up two things. The first thing is the naysayers. The second thing is, and I think I put it in the same category, is the people who will blow smoke and say, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is so whatever. And here's why I bring that up. The naysayers and all those that are hypercritical or what have you really understand what's hypercritical for them. And so a good example is some guy did this review of our platform and gave us 4 stars rather than 5. But then if you look why he gave us 4 stars, is we're not a free platform. And I'm going, okay, you've been trained because there's a lot of free out there in the world. And for people who don't know, if it's free, you're the product. If it's paid, we keep your data safe and secure and we don't sell it. That's a reality check. And so take it objectively and go, he's giving it a 4 because he doesn't want to pay for it. He could have given it a 5 and said it's a reasonable price. It's 0.02 cents a day to use a platform that's going to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yes, because I have documented that on my own and I know. But that's why you give it a 4. So keep it really objective and understand why they're naysaying. They may be jealous of you. That's another thing. So keep that in mind. The second area where I want to bring this in, because I think it's really important, because I laugh. You will share this with your friends and family, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is so great. This is so great. And then they don't use it. Do
Yes,
not listen to them. Do not listen to them.
they are not your market.
They are not our market. And people don't understand that. And they're like, well, this person said it was going to be great. And I'm like, they're blowing smoke. They
Plus, they
don't
don't
know
know. They
they
just
don't
want the
know.
best. In a
And
weird way, they want the best for you, don't they? So they're
correct.
like, it's really cool that you're doing something really interesting.
Mhm.
I don't effing understand it, but
Correct.
I want you to be happy and whatever.
So just
Yeah.
keep that in mind and be objective when you hear that, because you're listening to it and your ego is getting a boost. And you got to go, whoa, whoa, whoa.
There's no way this can fail.
Correct.
Um,
And so, and I've had people, they've heard these kinds of statements. They wanted to start businesses. And when it didn't succeed overnight, they're like, but they told me it was going to be like an instant success. And then I tell people, when you look at those people that are telling you it's an instant success, what's their job? What's their career? Have they done this before? Have they built a big company? Most of them haven't when they do all that. And then go from there. And at the same time, building companies, it's hard. I mean, that's just a reality check. To your point, it's hard. You're constantly learning, constantly stretching yourself, which is great growth. I think being in young companies, building your own companies, you learn more in 1 year about running a company than you would working for a corporation any day of the
for
week.
like 10. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Any day of the week. So you're stretching yourself and you know what you're capable of. And we're all capable of way more than we think we are. That's the other thing. But be careful of all those and be careful of your own judgment. To your point, you were saying this earlier. When we first started HomeZada, we thought for sure we were going to, the one particular market was going to sign up. And it was stay-at-home moms. We thought for sure they'd love their homes. They have all the time in the world. This is going to be important to them. It wasn't. What's important to them is taking care of their kids. But busy professionals who want efficiency, that's who HomeZada is important to. I'm not saying it's not important to the stay-at-home moms. I'm saying it's more important to busy professionals who are managing efficiencies and time. And so We had to get out of our own way to do that. And I'm going to share one other last experience where we have to get out of our own way. There was an individual when we did the alpha group, and we purposely had different couples, and we split everybody up so they couldn't influence each other. It's the other thing. Make sure people can't influence each other when you're sharing an idea. Because for those of you who are out there, watch 12 Angry Men. There's 2 versions, great movie, but it tells you how quickly everyone can get influenced by something.
Yeah,
So
group thinking and
totally.
all that stuff.
But this one individual, she's not really techie, but she voiced initially that I'm not quite sure what you do, and it's not resonating on your website because we didn't have a screenshot. She's the only one of all the alpha people we talked to, and we probably talked to 25, 35 people. But most of the other people, they knew we were in tech, but she is a dear friend who doesn't do tech, but she was honest with her feedback, and we ignored it because she wasn't all the others.
Yeah.
And
So
you have to be careful with yourself and be careful how to do this. And it required, if we had literally listened to her, the A/B testing would have happened earlier. We waited like 6 months before we did that A/B test about putting an all-in-one suite and the screenshot versus the digital home platform. That was wasted time. And so all we had to do is listen and get out of our own way because we thought she didn't know what she was talking about because she wasn't what the rest of the group was saying.
And so, like that, sorry, that definitely got me thinking about the point that you made about the stay-at-home mums versus the mums,
totally.
as we call them over here, the stay-at-home mums versus the busy professionals.
Yes.
Like, what was the turning point for you to realize that you needed to pivot in the other direction?
Well, it wasn't, it was partly the alpha group because we could see that the people who were most enthusiastic were the working professionals. And then all of the alpha group, we gave them an opportunity to sign up for free. The ones that signed up were the busy professionals. And I'm like, immediately, they jumped right on it and got busy, started using HomeZada. And then we started looking at who's signing up. And you can start seeing the time frames in which they're using it. They're using it after hours, after work hours. And you're like, we think we've been targeting the wrong group. And so we pivoted, and it made a complete difference.
So given that lesson to founders listening who, I know so many people who have a version of that story where it's like, there's an old analogy about digging, and you dig, when right next to where you were digging might have been gold on the surface.
Correct.
So don't just think that your thing is rubbish. Don't think that you don't know what you're doing. If you believe in something, and you're going to have to drag it through sheer belief for quite a while, because a lot of people may not get it if it's a new idea. And, what sort of advice would you give to somebody who's like banging their head against a wall, so to speak, like with the wrong people?
Yeah. The first thing I would do is, 1, take a breath, take a minute, walk away from the computer, walk away from whatever is going on in your business. Just walk away. And I don't mean close shop. Just give it a minute, go outside, take a walk, do whatever, but just stop because you're going to spin your brain into crazy. So just stop. And sometimes you have to be the voice of reason, even with your team. Like I'm the voice of reason a lot of times with my team going, hold on, let's stop and let's take a breath. And then from there, and I'm a big fan of whiteboards, start documenting on a whiteboard, just in bullet form, what's working, what's not. And that's the other thing. A lot of startups and company owners, they will beat themselves up on a regular basis because they feel like they've got to be somewhere tomorrow. When the average startup is started, at least in the United States, by a 42-year-old person, and it takes, I think, 12 or 14 years for it to really succeed. And that goes for all businesses, whether it's your local hair salon, whether it's a construction company, whether it's a software package, whatever the case may be. So you've got to be in it for the long haul. That's the first thing. The second thing is, so the whole tortoise and hare, Aesop's fables, the tortoise wins in the end You've got to understand
But
that.
it
But
takes ages.
totally, totally.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
get your whiteboard and celebrate your wins, as
Yeah,
little and as minor as they are, because we
I
beat ourselves up so badly that we're like, wait a second, this was a win. And then evaluate that win. Why was it a win? And then when
and
you do
it's
have some setbacks, evaluate that too.
yeah, yeah. And it's also about, touching on your point when you were talking about the interesting, because there's another part to what you said that I thought was really cool when you were talking about the busy professionals signing out.
Yes.
And a lot of people could sit there in that situation, for example, with the wrong mentality and say,
Mm-hmm.
stay-at-home moms don't want this. It's crap. It's the wrong
Right.
idea. When actually it's about seeing the positives, because you could never, ever, it's a bit like, they did a study a long time ago, and I don't remember the name of the study, but I'll add it into the notes. They did a study where they looked at people who growth mindset,
Yes.
if you're familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, they looked at studies where they presented people with good opportunities. And of course, in that, the people who were fairly negatively minded or had a closed mindset wouldn't see them. They'd
Correct.
walk straight past them in a way, right? And of course, the growth mindset people would go, oh, that's
Mhm.
interesting, and kind of go towards it. So taking your point of the 14-year overnight success, the tortoise that took 14
Totally.
years to get to the finish line. By the way, you never really at the finish line, you know this.
No,
You're
constant.
continuing. Yeah.
Mhm.
But also I know that a lot of people that I speak to on a regular basis will hear stories like the guy who started OpenClaw AI
Yep.
tool. It started it in 3 months ago or something, just got
Mhm.
hired by OpenAI to go
Mhm.
build all this stuff and a ton of money, right?
Yep.
That's the
It's
exception, not the
an
rule. That's why it's in
Yeah,
newspapers.
that's an anomaly. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a
Yeah.
total anomaly. When you go back and let's take a look at something different, like broad scale. So Instagram, an anomaly. And they were purchased by Facebook to get them out of the way, by the way. It was a defensive move or an
Yeah.
offensive move, depending on how you want to talk of it.
Same with
But
Snapchat, I think, as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
but Facebook, if you really, everyone goes, they're an overnight success. No, they weren't. It took them like 10 years or 4 years, but $1 billion in funding went into that platform. A
And
billion
investors
dollars.
had to fuel it.
Yeah.
They had to put gas in the tank.
Yes. A lot. That's a lot of money. That's not the norm. And so when I tell people put it in perspective, and to your point, so part of what we're talking about is there's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth.
I've
It's
not read it yet,
amazing.
but
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, amazing book. Amazing. I highly recommend it. But growth can be taught. A growth mindset can be taught. We naturally will gravitate towards negativity as our minds because we're trying to protect ourselves. But a growth mindset can be taught and we can retrain our brain. And that's why celebrating little wins is really important to keep you moving to the next phase. If you don't celebrate those little wins, in my opinion, that
You give
will,
up too soon.
oh, you'll
Yeah.
give up way too soon.
Mm.
And you really need to celebrate it. And even if you start practicing it and you've got a team of people, multiple co-founders, what have you, then someone else will start picking up if you slide off. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like if you start building it with a team, oh, this is a little win. Oh, this is a little win. And they may be rolling their eyes. You guys keep with it. Then when you're down in the dumps, the other person's going to go, oh, look what we did. It starts melding
It's
that way.
infectious, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And so
And
that's the key though.
the positivity, I always say positivity because I'm originally from Illinois, but I've
Yeah.
lived here for 26 years now. It's funny even when I meet people now, they'll say, well, you're American. You're naturally going to think it's good news or positive or whatever. Right. And I go, well, maybe, but also like, why would I want to spend time in the negative if I have the
Yeah.
choice, which I do have the choice? Yeah.
Correct.
I don't know when, like all of us in a non-grim way, but a factual way, we're all dying at different rates.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we don't know when our ticket is going to get punched. So why not live in a world where you can celebrate wins, where you can feel positive, where you can keep going? And I always talk about the difference between a marathon and a sprint as another way of thinking about the same journey, right?
Mm,
Like we have to train, train, train for the marathon,
yes,
and it's hard. It's
it
meant to
is.
be hard.
Yeah. You got to pay
That's why
attention to your
most people won't
food,
do it.
how you
Yeah.
exactly. It's the same thing. It's like when you're in a company, it's constant training. But just think of all the things you learn and the things that you can bring to the table for everyone else. And I'll give you a really great example because, yes, it's super, super hard, but this is one of the things I'm probably the most proud of when it comes to Meridian. Meridian had about, I'd say, 250, 300 employees. People came and went, but at our largest point, we had 300 at one point and probably 150 partners worldwide. And what ended up happening was when everybody started leaving the company, like 40 to 50 people started their own companies. And I'm sitting here going, holy cow. So we created more jobs beyond just what we did. We created more people in a wealth bracket because they sold their companies or they're growing their companies. We created more positive mindset because they took the initiative and the risk to start their companies. You can't be more proud of that. I mean, that's just exciting. And I know deep down, all my products provide value and they will resonate with whomever they need to resonate with. Even at Meridian, we had a ton of people saying, nope, this is not going to work for me. Even though we were the market leader 12 years in a row, even though we were like the epitome of the best product out there, people will still say it. Or they'll still say, oh, I can build it in-house. Okay. I don't want to waste my time anymore. If you're going to go build it, I'm not going to waste my time. And you're not going to get more information about how my product works because you're going to go build exactly what I got. So you can go to market
And
today.
and
But okay.
it's one of those things. I mean, especially in and the bit that you talk about, and I've got a few more
Yeah.
questions. I
Sure.
know, but inevitably, the interesting thing is you have to accept that, like, especially in the age of AI and vibe
Hmm.
coding and all this stuff,
Yep.
right? People, whatever idea you've got, maybe it could be replicated,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
in the same way that there are many things that technically could be replicated, but it's not the same because
Correct.
inevitably we are, okay, I'm a man, you're a woman, biologically that gives some consistency to
Yep.
things in terms of management, etc.
Yep.
But inevitably, the biggest challenge is, I've got a whole different set of experiences, different set of
Yeah.
knowledge, different set of tools. So whilst I may use the same thing,
Yes.
I could take it in a million different directions, and that's
Correct.
cool.
Yes.
So don't worry about it too much. I,
Yes.
I know a lot of people feel they've got to act fast, like super fast, and they feel
Mm-mm.
almost like this feeling like you're running on a treadmill and you really need to be walking. You can take
Hmm.
your time, step back and walk, and then kind of point yourself in the right direction. Because that story that I just mentioned about the open claw guy, that's rare. That's so rare.
Rare.
3 months to hundreds of
Rare.
millions.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Rare.
happen. That's why it's interesting.
And I want to bring this up because you brought up hundreds of millions. So because we sold a company before, so selling a big company for anyone who's out there, you you now have a whole nother set of responsibilities. And people don't understand that. One, are you ready for that kind of money to come in? Do you have the right setup for everything to come in? I mean, literally, at least in the United States, making sure you have certain trusts in place and legality and what have you. And if you're scrambling to do stuff, it's going to be a pain in the neck and you're invariably going to make a mistake. Going back to those dotting those I's and cross those T's with contracts. Do you have the right financial advisors? Do you have the right, all those things come with responsibility. So I tell people that not because I don't want them to want for these big money things, because I do. I think it's out there for everybody. But I want people to be prepared, which is I'm in the world of being prepared all the time.
You are in the
Um,
world of being
I
prepared.
am. I'm always in the world of being prepared with construction, with HomeZada, etc. But I just tell people, you don't have to, just because that happened yesterday doesn't mean your big win isn't going to happen. You just may have to exhibit patience.
Every story is a different story. And
Correct.
like you can always write a new chapter in your own story. And I often say that to people because you just never know when
Mhm.
the big yes is coming from
Yeah.
somebody that you really want to do business with,
Yeah.
or an audience of people in the case of HomeZada, finding those
Mhm.
busy professionals. And touching on that, while we're talking about those challenges, you were obviously in the construction industry
Yeah.
at Meridian, and I imagine one of few women in these rooms. Looking back, how did being the outsider in construction allow you to see things that maybe other people didn't see?
Great question. So the fortunate part is, and this is really fortunate, Meridian, our company, invariably, I can't believe this, we were almost 50-50 women and men
Oh,
within the
amazing.
company, which was amazing. But I think by, and I'm going to say it, by the grace of God, we had the right people that came at the right time because we hired people who had the best experience and the best value that they brought to the company. And it just so happened that it worked out this way. And at one point, Meridian also had like 50 plus languages spoken in all of our different offices. And it was kind of wild because you're learning from different perspectives. And so I think my role at Meridian helped because I had so many different people that I learned a lot of different perspectives. So it allowed me to communicate those different perspectives, including my own, when I was dealing with construction guys and gals. And we did actually have a lot of construction gals, like I call them that, ladies, who were actually leading the charge for Meridian in those environments, which was pretty impressive. But then the gentlemen, they all they cared was, can your product deliver me what it needs to deliver me and bring me value and savings at the time in which it does? And can you speak to me as if you understand my business? If you're someone here who is, whether you're man or woman, because we had both, like in the sales world, we had men and women who did not come from construction and they could not speak to the construction professionals, then they didn't succeed as well. And the reality is, can you learn the construction speak? And we were able to teach a lot of people the construction environment. And if they could catch on fast enough, they would be highly successful. So in my world, being a woman didn't really matter. Being knowledgeable about the industry did. Now, don't get me wrong. I do go into certain rooms and
And it's still,
it's
yeah.
different, but it's weird. So I think construction, they cared about, are you providing me value? Some of these other industries I'm dealing with now, it's a different ballgame. If you look at a lot of these industries in real estate, insurance, and some others, it's starting to change, but the majority of them at the executive level are mostly men. And yet the women are in the field. It's kind of interesting how that works. But having an awareness that we just need to educate them on what women and men look for, because we have the data now with HomeZada through Google Analytics on how they use the product. And so we can explain that when we're talking to people. Now, don't get me wrong. I do have a lot of industries, those in particular, that ask me at HomeZada for the data because, everybody's all about data right now. I'm like, no, this is
Data, data,
protected.
data, data.
I know it's all protected. It's the customers. I just don't believe in giving away data. That's why we charge a fee. And I believe that inside your home is still private. And I think it needs to remain that way. That's just my personal opinion. And I will stand by that. And
I'm
I'm gonna
sure
walk away
everybody
from
agree
things.
with you on that one.
You would
Like
hope.
it's yeah, I would hope so. I mean,
Would
who
hope.
knows with all the digital assistants in our homes and stuff. It's all very,
Correct.
that could be a whole nother conversation.
It
Um,
it could be, but I do have to walk into certain meetings, and I will tell you about a strategy I take, which is quite interesting. So use what you've got. I'm a firm believer in that. And I suspected, based on some phone calls, that this particular organization wanted all this data. I was like, they kept asking for it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And it was a large real estate company. I'm not going to name names, large real estate company. And I decided, because we were going to a physical meeting, oh, I'm going to layer it up. I mean, I had jewelry galore on, bracelets, rings on every finger. I just did it all. And I was like going, okay, because I was going to the East Coast and I was like, oh, they'll just think I'm from the East Coast because I am originally. And they'll just think I'm, all the good stuff. So we're all this jewelry, and intentionally they could ask the question again about the data. And I said, as a real estate company, and I jangled, and they go, why do you need all this? And they didn't realize what they were asking for until you could physically show it to them. And then they realized at that moment, yeah, I don't need that. What I need is the data as a real estate company of the walls, the stoves, the appliances, the equipment. That's the kind of data I need. I don't need the information about someone's personal contents.
So it's more, okay. So it's kind of the anonymized data sets that are
Correct.
useful to benefit everyone kind of thing,
Correct.
as opposed to, okay, that's cool.
Correct.
Well, one of the things that I really, really, really wanted to ask was, you're given this, I suppose, in a more broader sense,
Mhm.
being the lady in the room, but
Yeah.
also somebody with tons of partnership experience.
Mhm.
What would you tell a founder who's like trying to figure out how to build a partnership or build multiple
Oh,
partnerships? Because from your
yeah.
own experience.
Yeah. So partnerships, in my opinion, this is just me personally, I believe everyone can win. Win, 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 win. And so what I mean by that is, if you take, so let's just take a real estate corporation, because it's a good example. And same thing with insurance and mortgage. They have a lot of layers in them. They have brokers, they have agents, they have so on and so forth, and then they have customers. And then there's HomeZada. I can find ways to make sure every one of those layers and HomeZada wins. There doesn't need to be a loser. So there can be winners all the way around. And then
Okay.
with that, you need to be creative as a founder to find the win-win-win for everybody else. And when you're walking in requesting a partnership, you need to be the one as the founder saying, my product does this. We believe it can support your customers this way. We believe it can support your organization this way and your other layers of entities this way. And let me show you how this works. So do not go into a company expecting them to tell you what they want. Do not go into a company expecting them to solve the problem that you're trying to pitch for them. You need to come up with the ideas on what works. And that's not that difficult, but it can be if you haven't thought it through, which is also why I'm a whiteboard person, because
I'm a
you
flip
can
chart
put,
guy. Same
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
you can put all the different people or entities on your whiteboard and start identifying how can everybody win.
That's a really good way of thinking about it. And certainly even because I know people are afraid of like starting those conversations too early, as in maybe they're
Mm-hmm.
2 years into their founder journey and they haven't got funding, or they've maybe
So
chosen not
what?
to. Yeah. So what?
Yeah. So what? You don't need funding to go talk to a company,
No, I
but you
know.
do need
But
to
a lot of
understand.
people feel, yeah.
Yeah, but you do need to understand they're going to ask startups to do things that startups are not equipped to do. So I do think that there is for anyone out there listening, there's a company out there, I'm not going to start it, that can bridge the gap between helping startups and large companies come together, because large companies sometimes will ask for the moon and the stars, and it's unrealistic for startups to do it. It's unrealistic. I mean, the kinds of
They
insurance that
don't.
they ask for, the kinds of contracting processes, come on. Versus some startups, they also don't want to meet them halfway. You got to have some coverage and some insurances on your platform. You got to be able to address and be able to review contracts at a corporate level. That you need to do. Now, fortunately for our team, we have both mid-market and enterprise experience because of the kinds of contracts we sold at Meridian. But if you don't have that experience, once again, go find a friend that does. because the worst thing that could happen is you're trying to get involved in this opportunity with a large organization and you don't know how to read this contract and you can't afford a lawyer yet. Therefore, go find somebody who's willing to do it pro bono. Or there are some lawyers in the United States, I can't speak for the UK, but they are willing to take a small warrant out on your company so they get a small portion of your equity.
So you pay. Yeah.
Correct. And then you get deferred payments. And there's enough companies out there that are willing to do that. So be creative about your opportunities, not only with these big companies, but also the vendors you're working with. Because some people will give you discounted rates. They will come to you and ask you all these things, and then always do evaluations with that. All you have to
And
do
that,
is ask.
and you're right. So it's like, it's a lot of people forget about the simple concept of hopping into a conversation and just asking for the thing you want.
Yeah.
And just saying, I would love some help. If you can't help me, do you know somebody who could? And it's
Correct.
like, it could lead you on this really fun snakes and ladders journey. For people of a certain age, they'll know what that means. Snakes and ladders was a board game, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
can't remember. I haven't
Chutes
played it
and
for
ladders.
years. Shoots and ladders, that's it. And of course, there's always opportunities to be had.
Totally.
So don't worry about it. And just touching on, if I may, sort of the grit side. You talked about the grit, and you mentioned some of the ways that you were challenged, etc. What would you say your number one lesson to you now would be, if you were able to go back 14 years and kind of teach yourself how to manage the work-life side of things? Because I know a lot of founders are burning the 2 a.m. oil back in at 5, 6, and it will impact you dramatically at some
It
point.
will. To that question, you need to turn off. If you give yourself, it makes me think of like, I never use it, but it makes me think of like YouTube and it's got the snooze button. Like it has to turn off. So funny. But you need to set boundaries for yourself. You need to turn off. If you cannot turn off, and we did this even at Meridian, because I noticed that a lot of people were burning the midnight oil as well. There comes a point where you have to turn off. One, if you don't, your family relationships will suffer. And so a good example is if you've got small kids, I'm a big firm believer in, I don't, but if you do, I'm a big firm believer in you need to be there for dinner if you can. And so if you can sit down for dinner, that's great. And then you can always get back to work for a couple hours afterwards. So figure out your priorities. The other thing is you need good sleep. You need good sleep. You need good food going into your body. You need to make sure that you walk away from the computers, especially. And the reason being is you are going to burn yourself out, but you're also going to make yourself seriously unhealthy. And you're going to end up disliking this beautiful idea and company you're trying to build. And you're going to get frustrated with it instead of actually, and you're going to forget why you started it.
And it's going to become so it's very much going back to that idea of us talking about the marathon and looking after, if you were training for a marathon, you wouldn't eat pizzas and burgers every day. And
No.
You could, but I don't know that it would be a painful marathon would be even more
Correct.
painful. You're going to pay
Correct.
for it. And ultimately realizing, I often say, think slow, act fast, which I'm sure I heard somewhere. I'll attribute it one day. Oh, there you go.
There's a book.
Oh, Daniel Kahneman.
Yes.
So think slow, act fast. And of course, you get the concept, which is, take time to really think through the decision, then, make the decision fast. But once you've really done the legwork, and a lot of people rush too fast nowadays and feeling like they're far behind, and there's no point.
You bring up a good point. So someone else's lack of preparedness is not my reason for an emergency. That's really important. And our families, our friends, our colleagues, everyone will try to do this to us. It's up to you to establish your own boundaries. And as anything, and if you are in a founding company and you are dealing with issues, and by the way, crazy issues will come up. I had one come up this week, crazy issue that we had to deal with. And I'm like, all right, we're going to calm down. We're going to address it. Because if we spin our brains, then we're going to create a bigger problem. So we're like, okay, we're going to take a step back. As I said before, leave, go for a walk, come back. Okay, now let's talk about the facts and let's walk through that. But to my point, you need to actually make sure that you are healthy and positive and can respond to things versus react to things all the time. And oftentimes, someone may perceive something as an emergency. Oh my gosh, I needed it yesterday. Really, is it? Is it? And the downstream effect is it? And I always say this a lot to a lot of people. Most of us, when we're trying to start companies, not everybody, but most of us, we're not in the business of an emergency room. We're not. Nothing is life or death.
We're not triaging.
Correct. We're not on a battlefield. We're not doing those things.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And, or at least you would hope so. Now, I know there's some nefarious things that happen in other areas that we got to deal with, but most of us aren't. So when you think about everything you're doing, it's not life or death. And even my customers, because they'll respond, they'll ask for support over the weekend. Technically, we're not open, but we will give them support. And we tell them when our hours are. But we understand that they're trying to use something over the weekend and they're a little lost. So we'll give them support. But we won't stress out and run to the computer and do it like immediately. We're like, okay, we'll schedule time. We'll get this done. We'll be okay. Everything's going to be great. And if a customer is like, no, it's not fast enough, well, then to be perfectly honest, do you really want that customer?
Yeah, they're never going to appreciate you.
No, they won't. They'll abuse you.
Yeah, I mean, I always say in the UK here, there are certain delivery companies that are much better than others, right? You know, standard stuff we order online,
Anywhere.
and some will tell you to the minute pretty much when they're going to be there, and they'll call you or text you or whatever. It's communication. Whereas some will say between 9 and 5, and it's like, that isn't helpful at all. And very much the reason I bring that up is when you were talking about working over the weekend. People generally, if they're good customers, will understand that it's weekend. They'll appreciate the reply and they'll understand as long as you set the sort of expectation.
Correct.
And if you beat that expectation, great. But if you meet that expectation, you're okay too. Don't
Correct.
over fret over things in particular. Okay, so if I may ask you one final question.
Totally.
If there is a technical founder who's listening, who's brilliant at building, but feels somewhat invisible because they can't get the other parts of it to work, right? And by that, I mean the sales, the marketing, etc.
Yeah.
What would your advice to them be? You know, I'm sure you probably say find co-founders, find other, but I want, feel free to.
So that would be one of the first things is, can you find a co-founder who'd be willing to do this? And then to go find them, generally you're in startup communities all over the place where they will have events. So you can always, one, when you are at these events, talk to everybody you can, but more importantly, talk to the people that organize the events because they may know people who didn't show up. Oh, I got somebody for you. And that happens all the time. But the other thing that could happen is, if a technical co-founder has some finances set aside for this particular project, they could always outsource it. They can hire a fractional CMO. They could hire specific marketing individuals that could help them. However, the first thing that I would recommend from a marketing and sales perspective is this technical founder needs to understand what their strategy is, meaning how they want to go to market, whom they think they want to go to market to, and do they have an idea of what tools or marketing activities they would like to perform, whether they want to use social ads, Google ads, whether they want to use social posts, whether they want to go email campaigns, whatever the case may be. Like, you know, the long list, because it is a long list. And then determine.
There's about 50 I could probably,
Yeah.
if there was a challenge, I could probably do it.
And then determine how much budget you have as well. Because, and once again, I say play the long game, because it's a very noisy, as you're aware of, Michael, it's very noisy in the marketplace. Back in the day, it was about 7 to 10 touches for people to really realize you were out there. This is a reality check. Now it's upwards sometimes of 17 to 20, maybe even higher, depending on. So a touch, for those of people who are listening, because not everybody is aware of it, it's a marketing piece or marketing message or
Some form of communication
yeah,
out there.
yeah. And so, and it could be, and it doesn't have to be the same. It could be all different. So identify where you want the money to go and how long you want it to last. Because that's the other thing. If you don't have a lot of money for marketing initiatives and everything else, you got to maybe try a trickle in approach. It doesn't always work. Or maybe you do one big launch and then do a trickle in. So there's
And
all different kinds of things to do.
if I may sort of summarize that, that's the point. It's mainly to at least, if you're a technical founder, have an idea who you're really trying to target,
Yeah.
what it is they want, what tools they need, and don't get driven by a sales and marketing person, especially if they're outsourced, because they may come in, they're not. In one way, it's very difficult, right? I can't give general advice, but what I could definitely say is you're more invested in it than anybody who's outsourced to. That doesn't mean that you're always right or they're always right.
Correct.
But it does mean take it with a pinch of salt, and if you've got a big vision that you believe in, don't deviate too much.
And then at the same point, anyone you work with or hire, think about like how you build a company and what have you. If you hire people, whether they're internally in your company or externally, they still need direction. They need to know what you want to do. They may have their own ideas, which is also very important, but you need to make sure that they're on the right page. So people can come up with ideas, and we've had a lot of different marketing organizations work with us. They come up with ideas. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. You're missing the whole point. You don't really understand what we do. And so then it's when I realize they don't understand what we do, I'm like, oh, it's time for me to give you a demo. So I give them a demo. And then when I give them a demo, they go, oh, now I see. Okay. Yeah.
Going back to your Touchpoints point, of course, that's somebody being open to trying it, seeing it, experiencing it.
Correct.
And so it's probably even higher in SaaS and software than 17 to 20, I would guess, because you have to get them to think that change is something they're willing to do, as in whatever their current behavior is. This has been amazing, honestly, Beth.
I know, it's been fun.
Thank you for hanging around. What I will do is I will pop Beth's details to HomeZada in the show description. And if you're happy for me to pop your LinkedIn profile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would love to have you back at some point in the future to cover many other things, because as we both know, tech and software is just going through a really exciting wave now. And it'd be cool to hear about how you're getting on at some point in the future. If you'd like her to come back, pop in the comments, and then I will invite her back if she wants to come back.
Totally, I would.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being on the podcast. And to those of you who haven't already, please comment and subscribe and go check out Beth's information and more about HomeZada. Thank you so much.
Thank you.